Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to do what's called U-substitution. Okay, so we want to solve this, and this is a power 4. So again, this is one way to do this. There is another way, but right now we're learning how to use the U-substitution because that's what the objective is regarding these types of problems. So, um, so what do you mean by U-substitution? Well, if you look at the center term, you have an x squared, okay? So that x squared, that's going to be our hint a lot of times what we're going to substitute. So we're going to say let u equal x squared, okay? And then we're going to rewrite everything in terms of u. But before we do that, we need to replace the x fourth first. So would you agree that I can rewrite x4, x to the fourth as x squared raised to the power of 2? Would you agree that's the same? It is, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4. So x squared squared will give us x to the fourth. So we'll have minus 10 x squared plus 25 equals 0. Okay? So now anytime that I see a u, I'm going to replace it. I'm sorry. Anytime I see an x squared, I'm going to replace it with a u. Okay? So anytime I see an x squared, I'm going to replace it with a u. So that means this is an x squared, I'm going to replace that with a u. This is an x squared, I'm going to replace that with a u. Okay? So now this becomes u squared minus 10u plus 25 equals 0. Okay? So now this is something we know how to factor. Okay? So we can just factor this. So this becomes u minus, okay, 25, the factors of 25, 1 and 25 and 5 and 5. So we want a negative 10. So, and this is a minus positive combination. So that means both factors have to be negative. Okay? So that means this would be u minus 5 times u minus 5 equals 0, right? So I'm just going to set them, I know they're the same factor, but I just want to set them both equal to 0. Okay, and then I'm going to solve for u. Okay, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides, add 5 to both sides. We get u equals 5. That again. Okay, so u is equal to 5. Same thing here. U is equal to 5. Now we have to be careful because that that is not our final answer, right? Because we said u was equal to x squared. Okay, so now we need to go back and replace u with x squared. So this is going to be x squared equals 5, x squared equals 5. Okay, and then we take the square root on both sides. So that's going to give us x, and now remember we have a power of 2 here, so that means we should have 2 possible solutions, so that'd be plus or minus square root of 5, and the same thing here. Okay, we should have 2 possible solutions. But overall, we had a power of 4. So that means we should have 4 possible solutions, and that's what we have. And that's why I solved them both. Okay? But technically, you can just do one of them and you'll be okay. All right? We get 2 from this side and we get 2 from this side, and that gives us, I don't know why I put a 2 there, that should be a 5. Um, square root of 5. And that gives us a total of 4. Okay? And that's it. That's how you do it. Any questions? Okay, so why don't you guys try it? All right, so let's say you have 2x to the fourth minus 5x squared minus 12 equals 0. Okay, so you got 2x to the fourth minus 5x squared minus 12 equals 0. All right, so again, how do we know if we're going to be using U-substitution? Well, one indicator is that we have a power of 4 and we only have 3 terms. Okay? All right, so that's a big indicator that we should use U-substitution. Okay? Having 3 terms and have a power of 4. So in this case, we're going to let, depending on how do we know what we're going to substitute? Remember, we look in the middle term, okay? And it says x squared, and that's what we're going to be using, okay? So most of the time we look in the middle term to see what we're going to substitute. So we're going to let u equal x squared, okay? And then we're going to rewrite the first term here in terms of x squared, okay? So this is going to be x squared squared, right? And then this will be brought down x squared, right? And then now we can bring the 2 over and then the minus 5 over, right? And then the negative 12, okay? And then since we're letting u equal x squared, we're going to replace x squared by u. So that's going to be 2u squared minus 5u minus 12, okay? Now at this point, you can, we're going to have to factor this, and you can factor this any way you like, okay? Now putting in the quadratic formula is not factoring, okay? So we can use the slide method here to factor this. So remember, we just take the 2 in the front and then multiply it to the back, okay? And that gives us u squared minus 5u minus 24 equals 0, okay? All right, and then we're going to factor this out. So in this case, we're going to have u minus 8 and then u plus 3 equals 0. Now, as I mentioned before, don't, be careful, because we don't want to just continue solving for u here. We have to, because we'll get u equals 8 and u equals negative 3, and you say, I'm done. That's not true, because remember, we multiplied by 2, so then we have to divide by 2. So we divided the ones that have only numbers by 2, okay? So then we're going to reduce this. So u minus 4. Okay, now since this one doesn't reduce, we just bring that to the front. So that becomes 2u plus 3 equals 0. Okay. All right, so then we're going to set them both equal to 0. So u minus 4 equals 0, and then 2u plus 3 is equal to 0. Okay, and then we solve for u. So we're going to add 4 here, and we get u is equal to 4, and then we're going to subtract 3 and divide by 2. Okay, so u gives us negative 3 over 2. Now, again, we have to be careful over here on this part as well, because again, that's not our final answer. We have to plug in what we had originally, and that was the x squared. Okay, so now I can plug in x squared for u. Okay, so that's going to be x squared equals 4. All right, and as well as for this one, xy equals negative 3/2. Okay, and then now we take the square root. So I take the square root on the left side and on the right, and then that's going to give us so the square root and square will cancel, and then we have the square root of 4. Again, we have to be careful here, because remember, we have a power of 2, x squared, so that means we should have 2 possible solutions. So don't forget that negative 2 as well. Okay. All right, and then we do the same thing for this one on the right. We're going to take the square root on both sides. Okay, so the square root and x, they're going to cancel. However, notice that we have a negative, okay, and we have a radical. So we can't take the square root of a negative number, right? And we had talked about that. Okay, so so in this case, on the right side, we would have no solution. Right? Because again, we can't take the square root of a negative number. It doesn't exist in the real world. Okay, so in this case, then our only solutions are going to be x is equal to plus or minus 2. Okay, another possibility you'll see in the homework is if we have 2x plus 5 squared minus 2x plus 5 minus 6. Um, in this situation, we're also are going to use U-substitution. Okay, so again, we're looking at the center term, and 2x plus 5 is going to be our U. Okay, all right, so anytime I see a U, 2x plus 5, I'm going to replace it by U. So that's a U and U, right? So then the square will come down, so that's U squared minus U, and then the minus 6 will come down. Okay, right? And then this is something we're familiar with. We can just factor this, right? So that would be U minus 3 times U plus 2 equals 0. And then we set them both equal to 0. So you start to look like n's. U equals 3, and then U equals negative 2. Okay. So again, we had plugged in 2x plus 5 for U, so let's go ahead and put that back. So 2x 5 equals 3, and then we just solve for x. Okay. So if I move 3 to the if I move 5, sorry, to the right side, we'll get 2x is equal to negative 2, then divide both sides by 2. So x gives us negative 1. Okay. And on this side, we do the same thing. We're going to have 2x plus 5 is equal to negative 2. We're going to subtract both sides by negative 5. So 2x equals negative 7 and divide by 2. So x gives us negative 7 over 2.